Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to have such a big surprise for you. My colleague and friend, dear new friend, Taeler Hammond, and I talk about using alternative dispute resolution. In her neck of the woods, it's more reflective and corporate oriented to enable people to really understand their triggers, really understand how they might speak to each other. She's not a mediator, she's more of a corporate consultant, but she and I talk about how to bring the ability to actively listen, to take a pause, recognize our triggers to the forefront. It was a fabulous discussion, and I hope you do too. Remember to like and share my post if, in fact, you like it, my podcast. And until next time, let's listen to what Taeler has to say. Hi, I'm Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast, Why Do Pets Matter? 10 years ago, with my iPhone and a script, I recorded the first episode of the Ultimate Pet Resolution Summit, which chatted with experts about conflicts over animals. Our conversations were intimate, honest, and illustrated how disagreements over animals occur and how those disagreements can reshape people's lives and relationships. In November 2019, I started Why Do Pets Matter, a new podcast that continued these informative discussions. I'm so excited to have you here with me, continuing my exploration into a more meaningful conversation about why pets matter to all of us. My guests and I will share ideas, stories, and experiences straight from the heart, unscripted and holistic. From the bravest moments to the most brokenhearted, we will explore how to resolve disagreements over animals differently. One thing I know for sure is I want to have more meaningful conversations that will help all of us unlock that deeply felt human-animal bond that drives the emotions of conflict. Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, and I'm here with my good new friend, Taeler Hammond, who is an incredible woman who I heard speak on Will Work for Food, which is a wonderful group that we both support. She is an industrial organizational psychologist, facilitator, public speaker, consultant, and she founded the Nuvo Page Consulting Company, an inclusive learning company. So Taeler, thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful you being here on Why Do Pets Matter?
Thank you for having me, Deborah. I'm really excited to be here. And as you said, I am your new friend, but I am also a fan because I absolutely love what you do.
Oh, thank you so much. So at the beginning, we start and then we meander, which
Okay.
I've never had a problem meandering. But the first question I ask all my guests is, why do pets matter to you, Taeler?
Pets matter to me because they are not only companions, they are our friends, they're our family, and they're another someone that we can rely on for unconditional love. And so pets matter to me because I feel that when you need that extra shoulder to lean on or shoulder to cry on, your pet is always there. No matter what, your pet is always there.
And they never have anything negative to say to you.
Of course not. They don't argue with you. They don't talk back.
They don't get tired of you. They're always there. And if you're tired, they lay down next to you, which is always great.
Yeah, you
And
have someone to rest and cuddle with.
and if you're depressed, they get you up and out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. So, Taeler, tell me a little bit more about what you do in this wonderful field, because as we know, you have put together the program for us that was titled The Psychology of Conflict, Why We Fight and How to Fix It. And you and I have talked before we got on the tape about how people really get passionate about pets and the things that happen that create more angst and issue.
hmm So, a little bit about what I do. So, I'm a consultant. I help people who are struggling with leading with empathy and inclusivity. So I do a lot of leadership training, workshops, and I also do webinars like the one that I did for Will Work for Food, where I help people, no matter what their position is, with learning how to resolve something. And it can be an internal conflict, it could be something at work, it could be something that we encounter in our personal lives. But the psychology of conflict is just another type of webinar that I do in this series. And this is a personal series. I don't think anyone else knows it's a series, but this series is encompassing of things that make us mindful. Everything that I do, whether it's like an APA accredited continuing education credit module, or, like the Will Work for Food module, everything is around being mindful of our actions and thinking deeply about the way that we show up. And so, why this being a guest on your podcast is so important to me is because I believe that learning more about being self aware can help us in all aspects of our lives. And so I just love to help people feel seen, heard, respected, valued. And then once they've learned how to do that for themselves, learn how to do it for someone else.
Yeah, bringing that forward is so important. It's interesting in the field of conflicts over animals. People sometimes get wrapped up in
Hmm.
being right over getting it right for the animal. They lose their ability to really figure out what's in the best interest of the animal because they want to be right.
Exactly. And I think that we as people, that's a fault. We all want to be right. No one wants to be wrong. But I think that we need to start thinking of how us being right is going to impact the pet. And so, what I was saying before we started our recording is that we have to stop thinking of pets as property. Because if we fight over a house or a car, and that house or car sits still, or, whatever is happening with it during this fight, the car doesn't have any feelings about who it goes to. The car doesn't need to be taken out, or it doesn't care if you spend any time with it. But while this fight is going on to prove who's right, your pet is suffering. So the pet to me is not property. We have to acknowledge that the pet has feelings. Your cat, your dog, your horse, your turtle, whatever it is, they have feelings. And so you know that they have feelings because you all show emotion to one another. So we just need to remember that. We need to bring that forward and stop focusing so much on being right.
It's so great that you said that. And unfortunately, under the law, pets are still considered property for the most part. There are 7 states, I think maybe 8 now, who have put in legislation. So there are rules under their domestic relations law that say that judges have to decide the best interest of the pet. How do you
Hmm.
define that? They didn't define it for the judges, which of course you and I both know since we're in this field. Being able to define that takes a little bit of time and isn't necessarily best given to someone who doesn't know the pet, right?
Right.
Based on just what I'm going to say and what you're going to say about the dog that we share, well, who knows if they know what's best interest of the pet. And then there was just another case that came down because a dog was hit by a car in front of the owner's mother who had it on a leash. And for the first time, a judge has decided that this is a member of the immediate family. Never been done before, but because of the specificity of these facts, the judge is allowing the mother who is walking her son's dog to recover for emotional distress on seeing the dog run over.
Good.
And I know, right? And yet, the bulk of law and precedent set is that pets are property. And I don't know how we are going to sort of gently shake that out of the vernacular.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure. But when I hear you talk about that case, I think that makes so much sense. And I think that that should be common practice. I think that that story needs to be shared more often. And people should give their opinion on it. Because when you think about it, if you were to see, if you were walking with a person that you knew that was a part of your family, and this dog were the person in this example, if that person got hit by a car, you'd be distraught.
Yeah.
So if you had a piece of property, again, an inanimate object that was hit by a car, it would not be the same effect. So, again, I understand that pets are still considered property in most states, but what that judge did set a precedent going forward for judges that come behind them to understand how people really view their pets and what it does to a person to lose a pet, not just to lose a pet in general, but to have that pet taken from you right in front of your eyes. The trauma that that person must have gone through is incomprehensible. But the fact that that judge is showing empathy by allowing them to claim emotional distress, I think that's a huge step forward for us.
I know, and empathy is such a wonderful piece of what you and I both do because we work outside the courts. We try to
Hmm.
teach people how to do this in a way that, okay, it doesn't set precedent. However, you are able to take accountability and responsibility. You're able to appreciate and acknowledge. And so making sure that everyone feels as if they're heard, respected, and understood in these cases. Maybe if the law remains that pets are property, we can find a better way, a different way to resolve these conflicts so that the pet is honored.
That would be great if we could. If in the unfortunate event that pets remain as seen as property in most states, then yes, we do have to find a new way to find a middle ground almost where people can still feel understood by the way that they feel about their pet as part of their family, not just as a piece of property.
For us, we tend, when pets are injured, to be very reactive.
Hmm.
And in the practice that you and I both do, with recognizing conflict and trying to better handle yourself during conflict and yourself with others during conflict, how do you um, help people take the time to be more reflective than immediately reactive?
So a couple different things are coming up for me. I'm thinking about I remember when my parents got our puppy and he wasn't even a year old and he got injured. I don't remember what happened, but he broke his paw. I want to say it was at daycare and he broke his paw. And everyone was up in arms about it because Bruno was injured. And so, because he was still a puppy, he had to be carried everywhere because he had broken his paw. And so, of course, no one does, no one minds carrying a puppy around because that's,
Right.
they're adorable. But I'm also thinking about how now that he's 6, I'm thinking about reflecting on that moment and how we could have been less reactive. But again, thinking the way that you and I think, I mean, if he weren't a part of the family, would I have been as reactive as I was when I first heard that someone wasn't watching close enough and he broke his paw? I don't know. I don't know that I can say that I would. I think maybe that's my bias. And I'm going to acknowledge my bias here. But if I were to try to talk someone else down to say, let's be a little bit less reactive here and more reflective, I would say that let's think about the bigger picture. I know that what's in front of you looks really bad, but we also have to consider reflecting on this moment and how our actions from this point forward are going to change things. And you can either change them for the better or you can change them for worse. And so, like we were talking about before, when, people get to fighting, then someone is still stuck in the middle. So I would say that instead of trying to prove who's right, focus on the pet and their needs. Don't worry about being right. Don't worry about proving that someone else is wrong. Worry about just caring for your pet. That's the reflective moment.
That is the best reflective discussion about how to handle it I've heard in such a long time. And believe me, it's what I have created as a practice now. When people call me and they're so upset and they want to sue and they want to do this and they want to do that, and I go, I get it. I said, and if we try to have a sort of a collaborative conversation first, you don't lose your opportunity to sue. You never lose your opportunity to sue. And if you can work it out so that everybody takes responsibility, even though there was no responsibility on your part for the puppy's paw being broken,
Hmm.
um, but takes responsibility for, well, yeah, they were at daycare and I wasn't there to watch them, and that's, that's on me, but I gave them to you to be safe.
Right.
Recognizing that the people at daycare, because this is what I usually say to some of my clients when they have vet malpractice issues. I said, nobody walked into that room and said, I'm going to hurt this puppy today.
Wow. When you put it that way, it really disarms me because, yeah, I mean, thinking about the fact that a puppy was injured, it activates something in your brain
That
that,
amygdala, that
yes,
amygdala
yeah,
goes crazy.
yes. And so I'm instantly angry. I'm just like, what do you mean the puppy was injured? But really, when you say it that way, no one walked into the room with the intent to hurt the puppy. I'm like, oh, well, now it's hard for me to be angry because, yeah, I mean, accidents happen. We get hurt. And we don't wake up one morning thinking that we're going to hurt someone else or hit them with our car or any of those things. That's not the intent. It's just that accidents happen, mistakes happen. We were in the right place at the wrong time or whatever. But when you put it that way, it gives a whole new perspective.
Which is
You're
what
amazing at
work
this.
you yeah, this is the work you but this is the work you do too, because you were talking about triggers, and this is the trigger. The dog was hurt. That's the trigger. I'm off the
Yes.
races. I'm gone. No
Yes.
explanation, nothing. What were you doing? You were probably having coffee. You were probably in, and
Hmm.
they could have been in the room, and they turned their back for 10 seconds, and the puppy got his foot caught and whatever and broke his toe
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
probably screamed like a banshee.
Yeah,
Because
I'm sure he did.
and you said his name was Bruno, so it was a boy. So having
Yes.
lots of dogs in my life, boys are the worst. They are really Sarah Bernhardt's. They'll
Yeah,
scream.
rambunctious.
Yeah, they'll scream like Bloody Mary because they're hurt. And so the immediate reaction is, oh my God. And then it's, oh my God, now we have to call the owners. And I'm sure that that daycare was not really looking forward to calling the owners. But
Mm-mm.
in the work that you do, I know you help people figure out how to remain grounded
Yes.
and take responsibility and accountability.
Yes. I do help people with that. But I also have to remember to practice what I preach.
Oh, yeah, me too. Believe me, my husband says I'm better than I was. I'm not perfect, but then perfect, what is it? Perfection paralysis is something that I can't really live with because I would never be out of my room because I'd always say or do something silly. But you're right. So here we are. We practice this. We teach this to other people. We help them recognize it. And yet, when a pet is involved, which is the work I do, some of our innate training that we know how to implement goes out the window, because here is this animal that we love so much. A friend of mine, Peter Weinstein, who's a veterinarian, I love him. He said, Deborah, pets became more than property when we discovered a really good flea and tick medication.
Hmm.
He said, because then they came out of the backyard and they went into the kitchen. And then from the kitchen, they went into your bed. And so that was like the 50s or 60s, maybe 60s or 70s, but I think it was like the 50s or 60s that they had. I think at the beginning it was a dip. They used to dip the dogs, and then they had the medication that you give now that's oral. And
Hmm.
so here you are, understanding that pets started to become more than property
Because they were inside.
because they were inside. And then you absolutely got the benefit of the human animal bond to such a great degree.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like having, I don't want to say a roommate, but I mean, you have a friend or, another close family member that lives with you. They're in the house. They're with you all the time. So
Yeah, and they
yeah, I
never
could see
yell
that.
at you, except if you forget to feed them. They never yell at you. And they do bug you sometimes when they have to go outside. But other than that, they're like the best friend to have because they're not on the phone and they're never, busy or
Mm.
whatever. They're always right
Yeah.
there for you. So that's the thing that really, I loved what you talked about, because you help people recognize what's going to trigger them. And like you said, boy, I'm really triggered by this because it's a pet and not just some person coming up to you. And yet, in the world of pets, litigation, in my humble opinion, is the worst tack to take, because
Mm,
although you're going to set precedent, if you win,
if.
often you lose. And then nothing happens, nothing changes, nothing shifts. And what you teach and what I practice helps people create the opportunity for curiosity and a shifting mindset. So I'd love for you to share some of the experiences that you've had with having people be curious about what it is you mean when you say that, and then having that aha moment for the mind shift.
Mm. Well, I think that in order to do that, I'd have to go back to talking about the triggers.
Yep.
Um, so when you brought up the example, I had forgotten that Bruno broke his paw as a puppy, and I don't always remember that. But when it when something comes up that reminds me of that incident, yeah, I do feel triggered. And then I get to thinking about, what happened with my cat and how she was misdiagnosed and all of this sort of stuff, and which, led to her passing and blah blah blah. So it's like, I think that once something happens that gets the person triggered, they almost go on a rampage. And so you have to stop that before it gets too far. So I think that what I usually do anyway is just kind of get the person to get distracted, because when you're triggered, you're now hyper focused on this issue, and I call it going through a doom loop. So now that the trigger has been activated, you're now processing a whole lot of negative emotions. So it's not just the thing that you're triggered about, but you're also associating that trigger to this new situation. And now you're, creating all of these hypothetical situations about this new situation. These things could be totally absurd assumptions. They could be possibly spot on, maybe, but we really don't know. All we know is that you've been triggered, and now your mind is in this new state where it is remembering the trauma that you went through before. So it's activating your fight or flight. And so, or freeze. And so I think that we as professionals, we have to really remember the de-escalation techniques. And one of my favorite de-escalation techniques is to distract someone from the trigger. So what I do is try to shift their focus. And this comes back to your question about shifting the mindset. So when you're shifting someone's mindset away from the trigger, you do have to acknowledge that the trigger exists.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
it's impossible to pretend that it doesn't.
They
Because
won't
at
be
this point,
distracted if you don't. You have to
right.
hold a safe space for how they feel.
Yes, exactly. You create that psychological safety first. Let them vent. That'll help. Let them vent, let them get it out, get it off their chest, talk about the trigger, ask them what it is about this new situation made them feel triggered. Once they say that, then you can display empathy and let them know that you understand. That helps a lot.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
saying that you understand and, showing that you care, giving them your full and undivided attention as they vent and make the connection, that helps to disarm them a little bit. Then you can visit the new situation. Not to argue per se, but basically to say that I understand that this new situation has made you feel triggered. And I'm sorry that this is bringing up this negative emotion or bringing you back to that trauma. But let's see what we can do to move forward and how we can fix this so it doesn't end up like last time.
Yeah.
That really helps people, because if you go into the doom loop with them, you're both in the well and no one is there to pull the other out. But if you start to empathize with them and let them vent, let them work through it, and then you help them to understand how this current situation can not be like the last time and how you're going to help them through it, that helps a lot. We don't have to get to the courtroom for that.
They don't want to really relive whatever it was they lived that
Right.
caused the trigger to be a trigger.
Right. No one
Um,
wants that.
Nobody wants that. And so if you can, I always say I appreciate and acknowledge, and the only thing that agreement, I don't necessarily have to agree with you because that's what, well, I'm not going to agree with Taylor. I can't possibly agree with Taylor because she was wrong. Okay. But if you acknowledge and appreciate how Taylor might be triggered by that, it'll go a long way to finding a way. I always say appreciate. The only letter that agreement and appreciate have in common are the letters ARE. And
Yep.
we are going to work this out if we take the time to acknowledge and appreciate. Doesn't mean you agree,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we are going to work it out if you take the time to actively listen and appreciate and acknowledge it isn't the way you would have reacted to this. But that doesn't mean that your way is the right way and Taylor's way is the wrong way. It just means that both of you react differently when this triggering event happens.
Yep.
And that's okay because we all have our own stories, our own biases, our own life experiences that create what happens. And with animals, my God, everyone immediately, I mean, when I help veterinarians respond to social media posts that are really awful. And then, of course, other people pile on who have nothing to do with it and know nothing about it, but feel that an animal was injured. So let me say my 6 inches of peace, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the veterinarians who said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, you have to appreciate and acknowledge that's how they felt while they were in your office, and whatever happened to them, and ask them to call you."
Mm.
Now, the AVMA has put out a book that said, we appreciate that this wasn't how anyone wanted this to turn out. We practice really good medicine here at ABC Vet Clinic. Please call us so we can discuss it. And when I put that up on the board, because that's the social media suggestion that AVMA gave, I said to the veterinarians in the room, which sentence is superfluous?
And what they say.
None. And I said, so here's somebody who is just raging on social media because you didn't practice good medicine on their dog or cat. And the
Right.
second sentence says, we strive to practice good medicine. You're defending yourself and you're really making them reactive to the fact that you, in their opinion, are dismissing how they feel.
Exactly. You cannot dismiss how they feel with a personal defense. That's just adding fuel to the fire.
Not in that moment for sure. And maybe never, but definitely not in that moment because they can't hear you. That's sort of like lighting the edge of a fuse
Mm-hmm.
bomb that's going to go off.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always said to them, don't defend yourself on social media. It'll never work.
Nope.
Um, there's nothing you can say. And if you can get them to call you, and when they call you, don't defend yourself then either. I said, if they're saying things that are terrible and it's really horrible and they're cursing and they're swearing and they're being nasty, say, Taylor, I can hear that this is really upsetting for you. And I appreciate that you feel that you have to really let me know in a forceful way how you feel. And I want to appreciate and acknowledge that we probably need to take a little bit of a break. And I appreciate the information you've shared with me. And can we talk tomorrow, the next day? Because
Mhm.
I'd like to think about all the things you've shared with me, and then we can get back together. And I know you know why I do that because then you take a break.
Yes. And you need that break. I think I added the power of the pause in
You
that
did.
psychology. Okay, yes. So the power of the pause is real. And I don't think that people use that enough.
No, they say, what do you mean I don't have to answer? And I go, what makes you think you have to answer them right now? You're gathering information.
Right. No one can force you to answer. If anything, you're forcing yourself to answer because you're putting this um unrealistic timeline together now.
And
But
you want
what
to
you really
defend
need to do,
yourself.
right, and you want to defend yourself. And no one wants to be you know,
Trash.
talked about. Right, trashed. I was trying to find a better word.
Yeah, but we're pretty, blue collar here. We talk clean, we talk,
Okay.
but you're being trashed, and people are
Yeah,
saying
no one
things.
wants
You
that.
gotta hang up. And I go, well, you could hang up. I said, but then
You
that doesn't
good?
give you the opportunity to have a second bite at the apple.
Right. And I think that we need to weigh our options in that moment. That's why it's so important to say, I need to take a break. Because then you can say, okay, time out. Let's go back to our corners. Let's think about what we talked about today and come back together tomorrow after we've had some breathing room.
Yep.
It'll just give you a minute to calm down, and it'll give them a minute to calm down. And then when you come back together tomorrow, you've let that conversation marinate. So now you'll probably have a better answer other than just trying to defend yourself.
And that is the key. So you can't come back tomorrow and say, listen, I found all this information that says that you're wrong.
Ooh, yeah, you cannot do that. Definitely don't do that.
What you want to share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but for me, what I like to my clients to share is, this is what we found out. Can we go over it together?
That's helpful. I think that that to me, if I were hearing that as a client or a customer of that veterinary business, I would say, okay, they did some research. But I would still be a little amped up because I'm really curious about what information you found. Are you about to tell me that your doctor didn't do what I thought they did? I think when you say that statement, it's just like when someone comes to you and say, "We need to talk." Well,
Yeah,
what
you
does
start
that mean?
thinking, yeah, what does that
Right.
mean?
Right. Right. You don't know what that means, and then you start coming up with all these hypotheticals,
The story
creating
you tell
dialogues.
yourself, right?
Yes,
The
yes. It's the
story you tell
story
yourself.
that you're telling yourself.
So I'd love to hear what you might say differently, because it's really important for veterinarians and for clients to create some usable sentences that will not necessarily trigger a reactive defensive response from either the veterinarian or the client.
So, if it were a similar example to what you gave when you said that, we've done some research and we would like to speak again, there's nothing really wrong with that sentence. I do think it could be better. But if it were me, I would start with saying, how about like getting off the call to start this pause? I would probably say something like, how about um, we take a pause here and, acknowledge that you've heard everything they've said. Thank them for their time and for sharing the information and their feelings. Let them know that you're going to bring all of these issues to management or whomever, and that you would like to schedule a time to follow up with them in the next day or two. When you get back on the phone with them or they come into your office the next day or two, let them know again, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and feelings with me. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me then and for following up with me now. And I want you to know that your concerns are heard. I want you to know that we value you as a customer. And here is what we're going to do next. So you don't defend yourself, like you said, then or now. But what disarms people and makes them feel better, because you can't bring their dog back, but what you can do is acknowledge and appreciate that they took the time to share with you what they felt that was done wrong. Then let them know that I understand that we were unable to save your dog, and I'm really sorry about that. We are going to start doing some training with our staff on X, Y, and Z so that we don't have to lose any other pets the way that we lost yours. Something like that. Because if someone were to say that to me about my cat, I'd be a lot less angry, right?
I
Not
have to tell
just,
you, so we didn't, I just like to tell everyone who's listening, we didn't speak about this before. This is totally off the cuff. So when I speak to veterinarians, I always say, include the client in the solution.
yes, they want to be a part of the solution.
Because most of the clients who come to my office know they can't bring their cat back. but
Right.
they don't want it to ever happen to somebody else again.
Exactly. They want their cat to be the example, basically to be the catalyst
If they
for,
had to die, they didn't die in vain.
yes, all of their pain and suffering was not for nothing.
Right. Because we're going to make sure. I have to tell you that that is the hardest thing for me to get through to my veterinary clients, to include them in the solution, because they do take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again, but
Mhm.
they don't include the client who precipitated the conversation that created the new steps. They don't include them in that discussion. And let me tell you, if in fact, I've had three veterinary practices who've included the client, much to their chagrin, in the solution orientation. And not only did that client appreciate that they did something, but they became their biggest cheerleaders. They said, my cat did die at ABC Vet. However, they listened to me, they made things right, and they put protocols in place so it'll never happen again, as much as they can, because of course nothing is ever foolproof. We do the best we can, but they really took what I said and what happened to my cat to heart, and they've made some significant changes. So you might not know if your vet does these significant changes, but I can tell you
True.
ABC does this significant change. And so you have this person out there who may be your cheerleader because you took the time to bring them in and help them. And I've had several clients who've had animals pass, and then the veterinarian has done this, and they didn't leave the veterinarian. They stayed because the veterinarian, well, as I said at the beginning, right? There was no intent on the veterinarian's part to harm this pet.
Well, that's true. Yes.
It happens, right? And whether it was lack of observation or unintentional or intentional or whatever, most of the time it's unintentional and lack of observation. That's usually what happens. And that's what creates the domino effect of something happening that was totally unintended by anyone. And although, you should have been more attentive, the fact that now you're doing this, and this makes me feel as if, like you said, my cat didn't die in vain. My cat died, and I wish it hadn't. And I know that because I brought it to their attention and they were open to hearing me and making changes, another
Mhm.
cat would die.
Mhm.
But if you shut down that communication, you don't take the time to do it, then the only thing you can do is sue them. You can go have their licenses reviewed, which creates so much, I mean, havoc.
Yeah.
Because if you have a license and it goes through the license review board, I don't care who you are, you don't sleep. And in
Mhm.
veterinary medicine, it sometimes takes years for a veterinary complaint to go through the system,
Oh,
which
wow.
of course means that you have that stress. And for the most part, they're found to have followed the general practice rules for whatever it is they did wrong. And they might be sent for additional continuing education or whatever, but their licenses aren't taken away. And so then the owner gets even more angry because that should never happen. That guy should, but it's because they didn't start at the beginning where you and I said for them to start, which is to sit down and actively listen to what went wrong, take accountability and responsibility and
Yep.
appreciate how somebody feels.
Yes, exactly. I think that it's interesting to hear you say that people are not thinking that that's a good first step, that their first response is the defense.
Reactivity.
And
Yep.
yeah, that's so interesting. That means that we have a lot of work to do.
You and I both. You
Mhm.
and it's something that if we, in our individual fields, um, would be able to teach people that listening first makes you smarter. Just listen first to what Taylor has to say. And then if you feel your amygdala exploding in the back of your head, the best thing to do is take a pause.
Mhm. Yes.
Because whatever you're going to say, my mother always said, react in haste and regret in leisure.
That's such a good saying. And it's so true. You're right, though. We need to listen first and not just listen to respond, but listen and actively listen. I think that oftentimes we are just listening to respond because that's the way that we were taught as children.
Mhm.
But now, as adults who are living full lives and dealing with conflict on a daily basis, we need to listen to really hear and understand the other person.
And have the courage to say, Taylor, you've given me a lot of information, really good information that I'd like to think about. Would it be okay if we got together tomorrow after I had some time to think about it? I don't think Taylor is going to say no, because what I've heard you say, Taylor, is that we should listen, that we should take a pause, that we should really try to have a less defensive conversation. Would that be
Mm-hmm.
right? I'd say, yeah, that's what I think. And could I just think about that a little longer? And can we get back together tomorrow? I mean, Taylor's going to say, well, she heard what I said, and she's just asking for time to really reflect on all the good things I told her that she needs to do.
Yep.
That's the story they tell themselves, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on all the things I told her that she needs to do, which is pretty much true, because I am going to reflect on what you told me. Maybe not in the way you'd like me to. Maybe I'm, trying to find an answer. But in any event, it gives you the opportunity to deflect some of that negative energy, um,
Right.
create space.
Exactly. And it also gives you time to take accountability as well. Because if we did indeed do something wrong, it's okay to own that. I think that the person on the other end would be much more receptive to you if you own the fact that you may have done something wrong.
Yep. Yep. I had a case where the owner of the vet practice took responsibility for a surgery that another vet did in the
Mm,
practice. I wanted to kiss him because he did everything correctly. I was like really thrilled. Uh,
wow.
the one thing he didn't do was he didn't have the veterinarian in the room who did the surgery.
Oh, goodness.
And I said, she needed the benefit of what he was doing, both as a mentor and as the ability to take accountability and responsibility, so next time when she did this surgery, the same outcome wouldn't happen.
So
And
why? I don't mean to cut you off.
no, she left the practice, so she wasn't there
Oh,
anymore. So he couldn't, I'm sure he cut her loose because she maybe, but in any
okay.
event,
All
it would
right.
have been better had she been able to take accountability and responsibility with his support. What a
Mm-hmm.
learning opportunity that would have been. It's a hard learning opportunity, sort of like whoever was watching, Bruno when he broke his toe or whatever happened to the cat, the person, it's hard to take accountability and responsibility when an animal is injured. You just,
Yeah.
you get reactive and defensive, and of course the owner is crazy, because we are. I mean, our animals are hurt, we're crazy. I raise my
Yes.
crazy too. um,
Uh-huh.
However, if we can get back into our prefrontal cortex for a little bit and understand that I'm pretty sure that this person didn't do this on purpose to harm my pet.
You're right. We do have to think of it that way. But
They still have to take responsibility and accountability.
that part. So I think that's where I start to, lose my temper is when people don't take accountability. So I do try to give people the benefit of the doubt by saying that, I know that they didn't wake up this morning intending to hurt my cat. Okay. In the situation where my cat was misdiagnosed, the initial diagnosis to me made no sense. So I questioned it, and they gave me some story. So I, of course, I go home and I start Googling. And Google, I mean, Google will tell you 100 different things, just like WebMD tells us 100 different things every time we have a cough and we put it in. Next
Yep.
thing you know, somebody's
You have
dying.
leprosy, right?
Yeah, right. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to believe now. So all of that continued to go on until she got sicker.
Yeah.
And so of course, we went back to this vet and, we told them that this diagnosis, you
Can't be
said that
right
this was
because
it.
she's so sick, right?
Right. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll refer you to, I forgot where
Special.
they referred us to, but somewhere else. I think it was a VCA actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you mean. And I think that we as pet owners, because pets are like our children, we take their health very seriously. We know when something's not right. And we know that when we're explaining the problem to the vet, that we expect them to do thorough research. to look into what's wrong with them. And I think that for me, where the lack of accountability comes up that I'm seeing is when we tell the vet a certain thing and they come back with something totally different. Like for Carmel, when she was sick, they told me that she had abscess in her gums or her teeth or something like that, and she needed dental work because she had a cough. And I'm like, well, I know I've had some bad tooth problems, but I never had a cough. And then I get to thinking about all of these things. And so
Yeah.
I think, like, getting back to your original question, I think that, we as pet owners, we still have to think about our duty as the pet parent, their duty as the vet, and then the pet always being the middle person and what our reaction is going to be and how it can impact the pet, but also not forgetting that the person on the other side, that vet, has no malicious intent.
And what came to mind while you were talking is that, everybody should want to get it right for
Right,
Carmel.
right.
And you might not be explaining it in a way that would be a bell to a veterinarian because we don't use their language, right? We're going to talk
That's
about, "Oh,
true.
she's coughing and she's doing this." And so that might trigger something else in their mind that we know our pets. And so I always often caution veterinarians, I get it that you know more medicine than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but I know this dog, just this dog, better than you do.
Right.
And so I get it that I'm saying he's, there's a hitch in his giddy up. So there's something wrong with something. He's off
Mm-hmm.
somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they go, no, he's fine. Nothing's wrong. And I'm watching and he's got a hitch in his giddy up. And I'm like, okay. But then if you go to the specialist or something, I usually go when my dog has a hitch in his giddy up, I go to the integrative medicine veterinarian and
Okay.
she goes, "Oh yeah, his third vertebrae is out to the right and whatever." And how would I know? But I know when she, adjusts him gently, she doesn't crack him like a chiropractor, but she adjusts him
Okay.
gently, he doesn't have a hitch in his giddy up. Because
Hmm.
you and I both know, you probably not as much as I because I'm much older, but you can bend over and all of a sudden your back is twinging and you're like, oh my God, I just bent over. How can this be? But you can put something out. And so dogs do
Yeah.
the same thing. They slip on the floor or whatever they do. And so you know that there's something just not right. And what we need to do
Mm-hmm.
is to just listen better for understanding and to ask curious questions because you do know Carmel better than anybody else. So,
Right. And I think that what you said just then made a lot of sense for me. That dogs can have problems too with their posture, with their back, with things being out of alignment. And
yeah.
so, just like, a person, if we fall, we're hurt. Okay. We have a bruise, we've got a scraped knee, or our back is sore, or something like that. So, if your dog slips and falls, we have to assume that they may be hurt. Just because they have fur doesn't mean they've got padding when they fall.
Oh no, I know.
So, yeah, we have
I
to
always
assume the
say when they
same.
hit their knees, when they're going up or down off of something, oh, that's going to leave a mark. You know,
Mhm.
because it would leave a mark on me. Taylor, I,
Right.
I could talk to you forever. I'm so grateful you came on. Please tell people how they might be able to get in touch with you because you'd be a great asset to veterinary clinics, to any sort of shelter or daycare or anything that has to do with animals, as well as me. I'm not the only one. There's abundance in this world and there's more room for everyone. So tell people how they can get in touch with you and what you might do to help them solve these issues.
Well, of course, it was great chatting with you as well. And I would say that if you would like to reach me, you can reach me at my business email, hello@nouveaupageconsulting.com. You can also visit my business website, www.nouveaupageconsulting.com. Hopefully, you can put that in the chat for some folks because I know that the spelling can be a little challenging.
Well, I'm going to put
Um,
it all in the show notes for the podcast.
thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I can always help someone with learning how to be more inclusive and empathetic in our communication styles.
And boy, wouldn't that be great? Because you know what? Our pets are incredibly empathetic. We should
They
probably
are.
recommend them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
What a concept. Taeler, thank you so much. And until next time, everyone, Junie is here wanting a kiss. Kiss your pets for me. Deborah Hamilton, Why Do Pets Matter?